Okay, so uh, we've got a ton of stuff to go through today.
Yeah, a mountain of it.
It's about the state of Canada.
And it's not good.
No, not good at all.
Frankly, it's pretty disheartening. The main takeaway that the Canadians are struggling.
Big time.
Yeah, and it feels like the government isn't just clueless.
Right.
They're making things worse. Actively making things worse.
Yeah, they really are. What's wild is how everything's like all tangled up.
It is all connected. You've got this cost of living crisis.
I can barely afford groceries anymore.
Exactly. It's impossible to buy the basics.
And then that feeds right into the housing crisis.
Yep. Rent's outrageous. Buying a house is a pipe dream for most people.
And then, like, the cherry on top of this whole mess is everything from COVID,
Well, the pandemic fallout is huge.
lockdowns, mandates, the Freedom Convoy.
It's like it shattered our trust in anything.
Absolutely. And it's not just numbers we're talking about.
No, not at all. This is real people's lives.
We've got these stories from Cape Breton in Nova Scotia.
Rural Canadians getting hit from all sides.
Imagine this. You're already struggling to afford basic stuff.
Barely making ends meet.
Then, bam, lockdown restrictions.
Now it's even harder to get groceries or see a doctor.
Because you're miles from any services.
It's like a double whammy.
It's brutal.
This just shows how out of touch the government is.
They have no clue what real people are going through.
Like, look at the carbon tax.
Don't get me started.
It's hitting some provinces way harder than others.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Quebec's over there getting sweet deals because of their hydropower.
It's just not fair.
It really isn't. And all this unfairness is just making everyone resentful and divided.
It's tearing us apart.
And then there's the housing crisis. It's a total disaster.
It's completely out of control.
It's not even about affording it anymore. There just aren't enough places to live.
It's crazy.
And the sources we've seen suggest that all this mass immigration has made it worse.
Bringing in 1 million new immigrants in such a short time.
It's a lot to handle without a solid plan for housing them.
It's putting huge pressure on the market.
And that's on top of everything else.
It makes you wonder, can Canada even balance helping newcomers with taking care of the people who are already here?
Right. It's a tough question.
We're seeing Canadians struggling to pay rent, let alone buy a place, while newcomers are facing the same problems. It doesn't paint a very hopeful picture.
And let's not forget about the economy after all those lockdowns.
The pandemic hit us hard.
Lockdowns might have been meant to protect us.
But they absolutely crushed small businesses.
And the impact on everyone's mental health is huge.
All that isolation and uncertainty, it's taken its toll.
It really has. And then you have the Freedom Convoy.
That was a turning point for a lot of people.
It showed how divided we are.
Some people saw it as brave, standing up to the government.
Standing up for their rights.
And others saw it as dangerous and disruptive.
But either way, the government's response was a huge deal.
Invoking the Emergencies Act, freezing bank accounts.
It was a big overreaction.
I read this one story that just chilled me to the bone. This person had their bank account frozen just for donating to the convoy.
You're kidding.
Nope. Totally serious. This was an ordinary Canadian just supporting a cause they believed in.
And they got treated like a criminal.
It's terrifying. It makes you wonder about how much power the government really has.
It's a slippery slope.
This whole thing, along with all the censorship online and in the news, it makes you worry about free speech in Canada.
Absolutely. We've got another story from Cape Breton. This resident had their Facebook account banned for criticizing the government.
Seriously?
Yeah. Is this the kind of country we want to live in, where you can get silenced for saying what you think online?
It's scary.
It sets a dangerous precedent.
And all of this points back to leadership.
Or the lack thereof.
And accountability. Are our leaders really representing us?
There are a lot of people calling for Trudeau to resign.
I've heard that.
Some people are saying Chrystia Freeland should take over.
But would that really change anything?
I'm not so sure. The sources we've seen are pretty skeptical.
Freeland has been right there with Trudeau on all his policies.
It's hard to imagine she'd do things that differently.
Can you have Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP?
He's been getting a lot of flack for supporting Trudeau's minority government.
People are questioning his motives.
And the fact that he's eligible for a big pension doesn't help.
It makes you wonder if he's really in touch with what regular Canadians are going through.
It's a mess.
It really is.
It feels like we're at a breaking point.
I think a lot of people feel that way.
There's this growing sense that we need a snap election.
To shake things up.
People want new voices, fresh ideas, a government that actually cares.
It's a long shot, but it might be the only way to break out of this cycle of distrust and gridlock.
I think you're right. All right, let's take a closer look at some of these issues.
Sounds good.
We'll start with the cost of living crisis.
Oh.
This is hitting everyone's wallets.
It's impossible to ignore.
Ready to dig in?
Absolutely. Let's do it. It's insane.
Yeah.
The cost of living is just out of control.
Tell me about it.
It's not even about cutting back anymore.
Right? It's like we have to choose between feeding our families and keeping a roof over our heads.
It's gotten that bad.
And you know who's getting hit the hardest?
Yeah.
The people who can least afford it.
The most vulnerable.
Exactly. Families having to choose between rent and groceries. Seniors who can't afford their meds. Working people juggling multiple jobs and still barely scraping by.
It's heartbreaking. And what does the government say?
Oh, you know, they brag about economic growth and low unemployment.
Yeah, right? Like, those numbers mean anything when you're working more hours for less pay.
Exactly. You're still falling behind.
And don't even get me started on the carbon tax.
Oh, yeah, that's a real winner.
It's supposed to be this solution.
Right. Make us all go green.
But all it's doing is making things harder for people who are already struggling.
Especially low and middle income families.
The ones who need their cars to get around or can't afford fancy electric vehicles.
It's like they're being punished for just trying to live their lives.
And then you add the housing crisis on top of that.
It's a nightmare. Finding a decent rental is like winning the lottery.
And buying a house? Forget it.
The sources we've seen suggest that all this mass immigration has made the housing situation even worse.
1 million new immigrants without a real plan for where they're going to live.
It's just added fuel to the fire.
It's driving prices and making it even harder for everyone.
And it's not just newcomers who are feeling the squeeze.
No way.
Young people are drowning in student debt and can't even dream of owning a home.
It's sad.
Families are getting priced out of their neighborhoods.
They're forced to move.
Seniors are having to downsize or move in with their kids because they can't afford to live on their own.
It's tough.
And rural Canadians are getting hit especially hard.
Places like Cape Breton?
They're far from everything. Gas prices are killing them. Job opportunities are limited.
It's bleak.
It's honestly heartbreaking to see people who've worked their whole lives now struggling to make ends meet in a country as rich as Canada.
Something's not right.
No, it's not. And the pandemic just made everything worse.
Those lockdowns really messed things up.
The government support programs help some people.
But a lot of people fell through the cracks.
And we're still dealing with the economic fallout.
It's a long road to recovery.
And to make matters worse, it feels like the politicians are totally out of touch.
They don't get it.
Like that 7-week Christmas vacation they took.
Oh, come on.
Seriously. While everyone else is struggling to put food on the table, they're off on some fancy holiday.
The optics are terrible.
It just shows how disconnected they are from the average Canadian.
They live in a different world.
And then there's the whole COVID response. That was a mess.
It really was.
Vaccine mandates, lockdowns,
It's
Freedom
okay.
Convoy.
So much anger and mistrust.
It divided the country.
The pandemic just brought all these existing tensions to the surface.
Like the Freedom Convoy. Some people saw it as a legitimate protest,
Standing up against government overreach.
and others saw it as dangerous and disruptive.
But no matter what you thought about it, the government's reaction was extreme.
Invoking the Emergencies Act, freezing people's bank account.
That was heavy-handed.
Freezing the accounts of people who just donated to the convoy.
That's messed up.
It makes you wonder about due process and individual rights.
Where do we draw the line between security and freedom?
And this whole thing with the censorship online and in the news, it's just adding to the erosion of trust.
People are afraid to speak their minds.
They're worried about being silenced or punished.
It's a chilling effect.
Remember that story from Cape Breton about the person who got banned from Facebook for criticizing the government?
Yeah, what was that all about?
I don't know, but it's scary.
It is. It shows how much power these tech companies have.
They can control the narrative. They can manipulate public opinion.
It's a dangerous situation.
It feels like we're at a crossroads.
We are.
There's so much anger, frustration, disillusionment.
People are fed up.
They want change.
Real change.
They want leaders who will actually listen to them and act in their best interests.
Leaders who care.
People are calling for Trudeau to resign.
I'm not surprised.
Some are saying Chrystia Freeland should take over.
But would that really make a difference?
That's the big question.
It's not just about Trudeau. It's about the whole system.
Is it even capable of serving Canadians effectively?
There's this growing feeling that we need a snap election.
To shake things up, to bring in new voices, new ideas.
A government that's accountable to the people.
It's a long shot.
It is.
But it might be the only way to break out of this mess.
It's worth considering.
We've talked about the cost of living, the housing crisis, the pandemic response, censorship, political disillusionment.
It's a lot.
The question is, where do we go from here?
Is there any hope?
Are there any solutions?
It's hard to say.
The sources we've seen don't offer easy answers.
But they do emphasize the importance of individual action.
What does that mean?
It means we're not just passive bystanders.
We have a voice.
We have power.
We can shape the future of our country.
Exactly. It starts with staying informed,
Okay.
engaging in respectful dialogue,
Got it.
holding our leaders accountable,
Yes.
and supporting initiatives that align with our values.
So get involved in our communities, support local businesses, advocate for policies we believe in.
Yes, and maybe even consider running for office ourselves.
Wow.
It's about taking ownership of our future.
Not waiting for someone else to fix things?
We have to be the change we want to see.
I like that. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Let's take a moment to process all of this.
Okay.
And then we'll come back and explore what Canadians can do to create the future they want for themselves and their families.
So good.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all this doom and gloom.
I know.
But we can't give up hope. We have to believe that things can get better.
We do. There are solutions. There's always hope.
The sources we looked at mentioned this guy, Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, he's been making some noise.
He's been a pretty vocal critic of Trudeau and the Liberals.
He's definitely not afraid to speak his mind.
He's promising to tackle the cost of living.
Get rid of the carbon tax.
Give Canadians a break.
A lot of people see him as a breath of fresh air.
Someone who might actually shake things up.
He could be a real change maker.
But we've been let down before.
Oh yeah, politicians are good at making promises.
It's their actions that count.
We can't just blindly trust anyone.
We have to hold them accountable. Make sure they're actually working for us.
Exactly, no matter who's in charge.
So it's not just about getting rid of Trudeau.
No, it's bigger than that.
It's about changing the whole system.
Making it more transparent, more accountable.
A government that actually listens to the people.
That's the goal.
What about Jagmeet Singh and the NDP? Where do they fit into all this?
It's tough to say. Some people are really disappointed in him.
For propping up Trudeau?
They feel like he's betrayed his party's values.
Others say he's playing the long game.
Trying to make things better from the inside.
But it's hard to know what his real motives are.
At the end of the day, each person has to decide for themselves.
Do they believe Singh can make a difference?
That's the question.
So we've got potential leadership changes, calls for systemic reform, and the need for constant vigilance from everyday Canadians.
It's a lot to process.
Is there anything else people can do to make a difference?
The sources we've seen talk a lot about community action.
What does that look like?
Supporting local businesses, volunteering, connecting with your neighbors, building strong communities.
Communities that can withstand whatever challenges come our way.
Exactly. It's about taking control of our own lives.
Not waiting for the government to save us.
We have the power to make things better.
We're not alone in this. Millions of Canadians are feeling the same way.
We're all in this together if we unite.
Share our stories. Support each other.
We can create real change.
So what's the takeaway? What do we want our listeners to remember?
Canada is facing some serious problems, but we're not giving up.
We're resilient.
We care about our country. We're not afraid to fight for what we believe in.
We have a strong foundation.
Democracy, diversity, social responsibility.
We have so much potential.
We have the resources, the talent, the drive.
What we need now is leadership that reflects our values.
Policies that meet our needs.
And a renewed commitment to working together.
To build a better future for all Canadians.
That's a powerful message.
I hope it gives people hope.
The future of Canada is in our hands.
It's up to each of us to decide what kind of country we want to live in.
And then to go out and make it happen.
Exactly.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
It's been a journey.
But I hope we've given our listeners a better understanding of the challenges facing Canada.
And more importantly, a sense of hope.
The power to make a difference.
We can do this.
Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And in the meantime, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep fighting for the Canada you want to see.
We're all in this together.
Let's make it happen.